Hi, Dr. Roscoe. So, my vignette, my PowerPoint is on a political issue, which is the second of the vignettes that were presented in our syllabus. I decided to use a theory that I didn't know much about. We had already covered in class, but didn't know a ton about, so I could learn a little bit more. So I decided to use individual psychology, which of course is the brainchild of Alfred Adler. The problem, as the clients see it, Jennifer and Tommy O'Hanlon want to discuss marital issues. Tommy, a local politician with his sights on the presidency, is in love with another woman. Jennifer wants Tommy to end his relationship, but is fine with Tommy seeing other women. So, as the clients see the issue, it is really only the fact that Tommy is in love with this particular woman that causes any problems. In the grander scheme of things, though, as a therapist might see it, you might delve a little bit deeper into why this particular relationship exists at all. Now, as I would see it as a therapist, both Tommy and Jennifer are acting out a cycle of compensation, resignation, and overcompensation as a result of their feelings of inferiority in their families of origin. Now, my basis for thinking that both spouses are striving for superiority, which is a natural function, as our first instinct as an infant is to feel inferior and vulnerable. Now, Adler talked a lot about the family constellation and how birth order affects our temperament and our goals, especially. Now, in this case, birth order within the family constellation determines our earliest feelings of superiority or inferiority within the family context. Tommy, the youngest of four children, wants to be president to outshine his older siblings, a concept that Adler might refer to as a fictional final goal. Jennifer, an only child, feels that she has no one to rely on and has chosen a husband that relies heavily upon her for his status and reputation. Jennifer is overcompensating for always taking a backseat to men in her mother's eyes. She swore that she would never let a man screw up her life. She achieved great success in school as compensation, but has overcompensated when choosing a husband. Tommy has based his entire personality on his political facade. His narrative of the poor Irish immigrant family making it in America is romantic, but in actuality it's a story of compensation and overcompensation, resulting in an individual who is more of a product of his fears than a fully formed, holistic human being. Both individuals are more concerned with public perception than how they feel internally, as evidenced by the non disclosure agreement that Jennifer presented to the therapist at the end, and Tommy being late into the meeting in order to campaign. The political career and the public perception therein has taken a front seat, and the feelings of the individual spouses has been set on a back burner. While it does seem like the spouses do carry a certain amount of mutual respect for one another, the primary focus is Tommy's political career and the perceived notion of success for both of them. Divorce is off the table, as it would look bad politically. And now on to the treatment plan. Now, one major issue with deciding on a treatment plan after the meeting that we had as presented in the vignette is the way that Tommy described his relationship with Jennifer and not with the woman that was coming between them. He had stated that if he were to not come to treatment, that he could simply receive treatment through Jennifer and that the treatment could go on without him. Now that becomes problematic when creating a treatment plan, as you don't know if you're treating one person or two people. Can be very problematic if you are working with simply one person, say Jennifer in this case, as she seems to be the one to have more impetus to come to therapy and the one with the impetus to change. However, if we are working with Jennifer to realize her goals a little bit more, it may appear as if we're driving a wedge between these two members of this couple. So this treatment plan is going to depend heavily on whether or not Tommy shows up to the appointments and would change. I decided to do this treatment plan as if he is showing up to the appointments, but there's still a little caveat with that, which I will get to when I get to the prognosis. So for the beginning phase, we need to establish a rapport with Tommy and Jennifer, much like any treatment theory. That's number one, establishing a rapport. We need to nurture a therapeutic, empathetic, and constructive partnership. We would need to reframe the couple's marital issues into a context in which both partners, depending on Tommy's ability and willingness to participate, look to improve themselves. We need to define goals outside of the influence of their families of origin and have each spouse rate their happiness on a variety of marriage goals in order to take the temperature of the relationship. That is very much part of Adlerian theory. Okay, the middle phase. Now, the middle phase would really be heavily defined by the goals that were set within the beginning phase. One of the issues with this vignette is simply that it doesn't really give us enough information about what is really making either person unhappy in this relationship. It doesn't really seem that Tommy has any issues at all, and it does seem that Jennifer really only presents with the one issue, and that's that Tommy's in love, when in actuality she's probably getting walked on a little bit. But that's really not an issue unless the couple decides it's an issue. So again, these middle phase treatments might be a little bit dependent on how the initial phase goes. But as for the middle phase, we can use a psychosocial investigation of family of origin conflicts and their influence on the adult personalities. In this case, Tommy, being the youngest and really having that American dream as he described it, wants to outshine his older brothers and sisters. However, is that a problem? His goal is to become president. It's really only a problem if he decides it's an issue. Tracking of symptoms and patterns of dysfunction for one or both members of the couple. Again, same thing. Exploring the families of origin and trying to figure out really where they came to these personality traits. Review of systemic issues regarding the family constellation, formative experiences, and repeating patterns. Insight into lifestyle choices as well as goals and values. In this case, the lifestyle choice where Jennifer doesn't really want to have sex with her husband and Tommy is allowed to step out in the relationship. But again, is that a problem? Really only if the couple decides it is. Therapist is to use reflective questioning in order to give insight into repeated negative patterns and overcompensation. Again, reassessment of the temperature of the marriage. Adler believed that we should do that quite a bit. And reorientation towards a more secure and flexible perception of self. In this case, as far as Tommy's case goes, is he deciding that he needs to become president to prove something? Is that a healthy goal or not? Is that something he really wants or not? Jennifer, she wants to be married to a powerful man, probably. At least that seems like what she got out of her family of origin. Is him stepping out on her and cheating on her in front of her face a problem for her? Or is it simply that he's in love with this one girl? If it ends up being a problem for her, then we need to reorient Jennifer towards a more secure perception of herself, and that may mean leaving Tommy and his political career behind. Tommy, as far as his reorientation goes, it may end up that he doesn't need that validation of becoming president anymore. Now, the end phase. Once again, take the temperature of the relationship and reaffirm goals towards a more autonomous sense of self through reorientation. As these thoughts of needing to succeed have been so persistent throughout the lives of these two people, it would be important to give homework and to address recidivism. But again, heavily dependent on what their goals are. Now, the prognosis. I really felt that this vignette, as far as a prognosis goes, just simply gave us not enough information. We didn't really know, or there's no real problems other than this one sticking point of Tommy is in love with this girl. Now, they obviously have a unique marriage. So it's all about public perception to them, but are they uncomfortable in that spotlight? It doesn't necessarily seem so. So, as far as their prognosis using individual psychology, individual psychology is a non-evidence-based practice. While it gives a lot of insight onto psychopathology and how we form our attitudes, using simply individual psychology may not necessarily be an effective practice. Again, it's heavily dependent on participation by both spouses. As we know, you can't change anyone, you can only change yourself. It seems like Tommy doesn't necessarily want to change himself. He seems fairly happy, even if a bit pompous, but he seems happy and he wants to contribute to the public good. He believes that he is the public good. So he might be a little bit narcissistic, but he's happy. Jennifer, the only thing she seems to be unhappy about is simply that Tommy's in love and not that he's stepping out on her. So it's not up to the therapist to decide that. So again, be heavily dependent on participation by both spouses and heavily dependent on the goals to be defined. Let's see. And here are my references. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed it.